And you said that that you all support the cap and trade legislation and Congress doing something rather than the EPA doing something. Right now, in the cap and trade proposal, there is no credits for agriculture. In fact, it's left up to the EPA to do it. How do you plan on addressing that?
Well, thank you very much for the question. We hope that you all might figure out a way to address that in the legislation. Very seriously, many of us in the Ag Committee, I understand that the plan here is that the various committees of jurisdiction will take up different parts of this bill. And our hope is that especially members of the Agriculture Committee will soon convene and make their recommendations to do the kinds of things that I asked for in my testimony. I think that others have asked for as well. We don't really have an issue with EPA sort of having oversight over the cap and trade system, if you will. But we believe very strongly that USDA, the law needs to require that USDA is the one who writes the standards for offsets, who establishes the criteria for which they will be granted, provides the technical assistance to farmers, all those sorts of things. I think if Congress were to pass something that had EPA doing all of that relative to offsets for agriculture, a lot of our members would be frightened, might be a little too strong, but they'd be very, very concerned. They'd much prefer to work with EPA or with USDA. That's where the expertise is as well.
Question for you and for Mr. Yoder. I'll start with Mr. Yoder. If cap and trade moves us more towards cleaner fuels, and that's pushing us in a big way towards natural gas, getting our electricity from natural gas. In some estimates, we're seeing, at least in Missouri, that energy prices could go up, or prices for that energy could go up as much as 30%. Well, have you guys thought about, your organizations thought about what that's going to do to our fertilizer prices? I mean, you got to have anhydrous ammonia before you can produce any other fertilizer, and the majority of our nitrogen sources are coming from anhydrous. And if those prices, I don't know if we can stand as an industry, another 30% increase, particularly an industry that is a price taker on both ends. We're a price taker for all of our inputs, and we're a price taker for all of our output. We have no control over either side.
There's no question that our inputs will go up, especially fertilizer. In agriculture, we're very energy intensive, just like the steel industry. Virtually everything we do has got to do with energy, and whether it's natural gas or whether it's nitrogen fertilizer that is natural gas, as well as other things that emit greenhouse gas like potassium and phosphorus. That's really why, as we look at this whole thing, our costs are going to go up. Even if agriculture would remain an uncapped entity, we will be profoundly impacted by everyone else's carbon footprint, and our costs will go up dramatically. That's really why it's important, we think, you put a good, solid, viable cap and trade system in place so we can recover some of those costs, and that we can go ahead and deliver the best value for food and feed and fuel in this country and the world, for that matter. But that's really what we're looking for as an offset to combat some of those extra costs. At the same time, as we do this, I just would like to add this: we have to make sure that this is a simplistic enough approach that we can have a way that's easily verified. One of the things that I have in my written testimony is the fact that we've been doing some international work. Like I said, I was in Poznan, Poznan, Poland last year, and talked to a lot of people about agriculture's role, and they have lots of questions. And I'm actually going on an exchange with a group with the Environmental Defense Fund in July, and we're going to involve other international countries as far as this whole cap and trade. Just like Mr. Kavanaugh mentioned, it doesn't do us any good to have a very expensive and complicated cap and trade system here if the rest of the world is not going to be on the same page. So it's important that as you think about developing a cap and trade system, or whatever direction that Congress chooses to go, that it reflects what's workable in the entire globe. And I think that's why it's important for us to just keep things on a simplistic basis, make sure that's real, make sure it's verifiable, but keep the credits fungible or interchangeable, whether it's a credit created here in the United States or created in China or wherever, but they need to be the same. But that's really getting back to your original point. We have to make sure that we have a mechanism where we can recover some of that additional cost so we don't have to pass that on to the consumer for food.
Ms. Johnson?
I would agree very much with what was just said. We believe that it's just a matter of time before this country does something relative to climate change. Much of the rest of the world is there. If we do nothing, if Congress does nothing on this issue, we now have a Supreme Court ruling directing EPA, not saying they can, but directing them to do something. That strikes us as being a far worse alternative than sitting down around the table and figuring out, okay, if we're going to do something on this, how should we do it? How should we make it best benefit agriculture while we know costs are going up? There is really no question that we're going to see fuel prices increase, our fertilizer prices in particular likely to go up, as you indicated. Those costs are going to go up. If we can get agriculture at the table and get the Ag Committee to weigh in very quickly with the kinds of recommendations that we're making, it provides us an opportunity to not only do the right thing here in this industry, but also to recoup a significant number of those cost increases. How much? I don't know that anybody can answer that, but clearly we're going to be better off if we do something as opposed to letting EPA regulate it. That's our view anyway.
Real quick, Mr. McNamara, you mentioned that, with the increased cost of materials, that it's going to have an impact on your industry and with cap and trade. But just out of curiosity, and most of our roofing materials right now are asphalt based. I mean, what is that going to do to homeowners or consumers out there? And all those roofs, millions and millions and millions of roofs out there that have to be taken care of.
A lot of shingles out there on rooftops. For sure. There's three areas that come to mind. The asphalt in terms of costs, input costs that would be affected in our industry. Number one certainly is the asphalt products that relates to shingles on steep roofs, which are covering the country, as you mentioned. Millions of rooftops with that, steep roofs, and then also even on low slope or flat roofs, we have asphalt-based systems that are still a very major portion of systems that are put in place yet today. Asphalt, liquid asphalt itself, and then also roll goods that are roofing products with that. Another area is insulation for our industry, rigid board insulation that is produced through the use of quite a bit of energy, either through the drying or blowing agents required to produce the rigid board insulation, foam board and other types of rigid insulation. And then the third area that are affected comes to mind for us in terms of energy costs and input costs for us are simply the fuel costs that we also incur, as was mentioned, for both the fleets that we operate, our trucks, our cranes that we operate, and then the rooftop equipment that we try to use. It's very backbreaking work, so rooftop equipment is critical in our in our industry and usage.